Okay, so we are going to start with the piece number 9, which is the front and back outer, and piece number 8, which is the trim. So using your double-sided tape, if you have it, if not, go ahead and use glue. We're going to apply the double-sided tape to the just the bottom half and press that onto the front and the outer back, just at the tip, maybe like 3/8 of an inch down. We're going to do that for the front as well as the back. Okay, so once you have that attached, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to stitch. And we're going to stitch just at the very edge. And we're going to do that for both pieces. And now we're going to grab the lining back and front, as well as the trim back and front, and do the exact same thing we did with the front pieces. You're going to attach the trim to the top of the lining and stitch close to the edge. Okay, so this part is optional. If you have a fabric that you're using or leather that you're using that has a lot of stability, if it's thick enough and you don't need to add a stiffener, then you can skip this part. If not, this is where you'll add the stiffener. And the stiffener is piece number 12. And so you're going to put the stiffener with the glue and just place it onto the back of the front and back piece. Again, this part is totally optional, and there's different stiffeners that you can use. The one I'm using for this one is just a thicker piece of leather, but you can use a Texan, you can use any type of stabilizer that you have handy. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just add a few clips just to make it a bit more stable because I put quite a bit of glue on here and so I don't want it to shift. So if you put these on just for a few minutes, it should be fine and hold it very stable for you. Then you're going to grab the lining fabric, the gusset lining, which is number 10, as well as the gusset top, which is piece number 1. And on the very bottom, you're going to apply glue, or you can use your double-sided tape. This is just giving you an option. And then you're going to put the gusset top at the very top of the gusset lining. And if you'll see, one side of the gusset lining is going to be wider than the top. So you want to make sure you put the gusset top at the thinner part of the gusset lining. Okay, so once that's dried nicely, you want to go ahead and just stitch. And when you stitch, you want to stitch at the very edge across the top, and you want to do that on both sides. So now we're going to take the two finished gussets and we're going to put right sides together and stitch across the bottom. So now we're going to take the two pocket pieces, place them on the lining where the pocket placement lining is. And then we're just going to stitch. We're going to stitch the three sides, leaving the top open. So now we're going to go ahead and insert the magnet closures. So on the trim pieces, you're going to have to make sure that you have already noted where the placement is for the magnet pieces. This part is really important, that the placement is proper, because when you close the bag, you want to make sure it closes up correctly. So you have these little discs here as well. Depending on the thickness of your fabric, you may need to add a little stabilizer. So I just cut little round pieces of stabilizer just to put in the back of the magnets if the fabric is not as thick. So you're going to do this on both sides, only on the lining fabric. So before you close the bag up also, you want to make sure you put these two pieces together, the front and the back lining, close them up just to make sure they sit properly before we finish on with the bag. And again, you're doing this for the front and the back lining only, not the front and the back of the outer portion of the bag. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to take the base stiffener, which is piece number 14, apply some glue to it and just kind of like sit to the side for now. And then you're going to grab piece number 13, which is the gusset outside. You're going to put double-sided tape at the bottom of piece number 13. Remember, the bottom part is going to be a bit wider than the top, so just make sure you put it across the bottom. And then you're going to take the gusset base and you're going to put the gusset base on each side of the gusset outside. Now you're going to stitch down each side of the gusset base. So once you have that stitched, then you want to go ahead and insert the feet. Remember, you should have done the feet placement holes prior to this step. So go ahead and insert the feet, all 4 feet. Which can be a little tricky. So you, depending on what type of feet you have, I like using the screw post feet. It's just, to me, so much easier. And then once you do that, you want to go ahead and position properly the base stiffener. Okay, so now you want to grab the handle, which is piece number 5, and there's 2 pieces of leather as well as the stiffener, which is piece number 3. Go ahead and apply glue to one side of the stiffener. And then you're going to place the stiffener on one piece of the leather. And then just kind of like press that down. Make sure it's centered as you can get. And then you're going to take the other piece of leather, apply glue to this piece. Make sure you go all the way down. You want to make sure this is completely sealed. And then you're going to place this piece of leather on top of the other leather. And you want to press with your finger really well after you do that. And make sure it's nice and even and it doesn't slip. So once you do that, you want to go ahead and stitch all the way around. Okay, so now you want to take the front and the back, as well as the front and the back lining, and you want to get your glue and apply glue to the top of the bag, if you can see here. And this is the lining portion. So you want to completely cover this in glue on the front as well as the back portion. So once this gets a little stickier, so you want to wait maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. You want to put the back and the back of the lining and the back of the bag with the front of the lining and the front of the bag, and you want to just kind of press this together, and then let it sit for a few minutes, because once you let it sit in, it like really solidifies the glue. So now you want to stitch across the top, making sure that stitching is really neat, as well as the whole perimeter of the bag. And you want to do that for the front and the back. On both pieces. Okay, so you now want to grab the flap, which is piece number 11, as well as the handle, the finished handle. So you want to grab your double-sided tape, because you want to put your handle, you want to place it on top of your leather flap. And when you want to do that, and you want to place it over the screw post placements that's on the flap. So you should have already put the hole in the handle as well as the flap. So when you place that on top, you're just going to place the hole for the handle on top of the hole for the flap. And then just go ahead and use the double-sided tape, or you can also use just your clips. And then you want to go ahead and put the D-rings on if you haven't done that, and if you decide to do that. Again, the D-rings are optional. It's just an additional, just kind of decoration for the bag. And then what you want to do is go ahead and stitch across the handle and the flap on each side, very close to the edge. Okay, so once you have the handle stitched to the top flap, now what you want to do is go ahead and put the screws in. And you want to place them in on both sides, which is securing the handle into the flap. Again, it's really important that prior to getting started, you poke the holes. So you can either use an awl, you can use an X-Acto knife, or you can use a hole punch. And again, I think I mentioned before, I really like using the screw post. They just seem a lot easier. And they look nicer. Okay, so now you want to take the flap strap, which is piece number 2, and your D-ring. Apply glue all over the bottom or the underside of the flap strap. And you want to make sure you do this really well and get every little piece of the underside of the flap strap. Kind of let it get a little sticky. And then you want to slide your D-ring in. And making sure it's even on both sides, you want to press that all the way up. And then you want to go ahead and stitch. And you want to go down as far as you can. You want to turn this around. And then you want to stitch across the top of the D-ring. Then you want to go ahead and grab the flap, and you want to place the end at the flap strap placement, and then you want to stitch. Okay, so now you want to go ahead and grab the second flap, and you want to apply glue really generously to this part. So once you put all the glue on, you want to let it sit just for a few minutes. And this is for all the pieces that you're going to apply the glue to, because it helps it get a bit sticky and it helps it adhere a bit better. So once you put the glue on, let it sit, you're going to then affix it to the bottom half of the flap. Then you're going to again let it sit for a few minutes, and then you're going to stitch. And when you stitch, you're going to stitch all around the perimeter, being very careful as you go over the sides where the handle's connected. And you want to reinforce that side as well. Okay, so once you have it all clipped, you want to go in and stitch all the way around, being very careful and making sure you grab all the leather and the fabric as you go around the curved edges. So you want to do that for both sides, the front and the back. Okay, so once you have it stitched, now what you want to do is go ahead and grab the gusset pieces. And these are the lining gusset pieces. And you're going to install the magnets, the magnet closures. So you want to do the magnet closures in the same way. You want to make sure the hole is punctured. So the hole that's on the gusset tops, that hole is a placement hole. So you want to make sure it's centered. Both the magnet pieces are centered on this hole. And again, if you need the stabilizer, you want to go ahead and insert the stabilizer as well. So before we close the back up, you want to make sure you test the magnets just to make sure they're sitting properly in case you need to make any adjustments before you sew the back completely. Okay, so I'm going to slow this part down a bit. So what you're going to do is you're going to insert or attach the gusset lining to the bag first. So right on the gusset lining, you have a little, kind of like a little divot. You want to start attaching where that little divot is. So if you pick up your gusset piece, it kind of goes in. There's a portion that you have at the top, and then it gets slimmer. So it's probably about an inch down from the top. You'll see kind of like a little divot. You want to start attaching where that divot is, and then attach all the way around. So you want to do that for the front and the back. So if you can see closely, you can kind of see where that divot is. That's where you need to attach it. And as you can see, it's right sides together. And so you then want to do the same thing to the other side as well. You're starting the attachment where that divot is on the other side of the gusset top. And as you can see, that extra fabric or flap that's on top, that leather that's kind of folded over, that's going to be attached to the gusset outer fabric. So you want to make sure you clip it and grab all the pieces, the different layers that you have. And then we're going to stitch. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and stitch as we go around. Again, it's really important that you grab all the layers as you go around, especially with the curve. When you are sewing into the curve, and also depending on the thickness of your material, that part can be a bit tricky. So you just have to get in there, making sure as you go around the curve, you're grabbing everything. And you want to do this on both sides. Okay, so now what you want to do is grab the finished flap, and you want to attach this flap to the top of your outside gusset. So go ahead, use your double-sided leather tape, and you're going to place the flap right here on the edge, but not too far on the edge. So you want to go down about an inch. And then you want to take and stitch across the top. So as you're stitching, you want to make sure you reinforce the ends. Okay, so now we're going to attach the outer gusset, but before we do that, let's go ahead and trim that seam allowance there. So we want to trim, make sure you don't trim through the actual stitching. So we want to do that on both sides. Okay, so I'm going to slow this one down just a bit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to attach the outer gusset to the bag. So we're going to go ahead and clip just so that we can find the proper placement. Then we're going to go ahead and apply the glue. So we're going to apply the glue all across the top on both sides. And again, we're going to let this sit just for a few minutes before we work with it. We're going to do it on this side as well. And make sure when you line this up, you line this up exactly with the back side, because you don't want any like fold over. And we'll go ahead and pin that. It just helps kind of keep it in place until it completely dries. We're going to do the same thing with the other side. So once we have this stabilized and kind of like glued down a bit, we're going to then stitch. We're going to stitch just around these edges here at the top all the way around, and we're going to do that on both sides. So once we have this stitched, now what we're going to do is attach the outer gusset just like we did the lining gusset. So at the tops, as you can see, some of the binding kind of sticks out a bit. Don't worry about that. Once you stitch this all on, then you're going to go back and trim any excess that you have that's kind of at the top. So if you have any that's kind of protruding over, don't worry about it. So the same process, where that divot is where you want to attach the binding. So you want that binding to start right where the divot of the gusset top is. Again, as you're going around, you want to make sure you really have the clips in as you go around the curve, because you want to make sure you stitch all of those pieces. And you want to do this for both sides and then stitch all the way around. So in terms of the stitching, you can either do a regular stitch, which is what I've been doing throughout this process, or you can do a whip stitch, which I did a whip stitch around the end. Now, a whip stitch is done by hand. You're going to use that leather sewing needle and a waxed thread as you go through. And it gives it kind of like a different look. But it's also a process where if you don't have a sewing machine, or you can't get into kind of like the crevices with your current sewing machine, a whip stitch is really cute. And it's just really interesting. So kind of a final step after everything is stitched up is you want to go back through and use your edge coat along all the edges. And then that is it. You go ahead and let this dry, and your bag is complete. I hope this was easy enough to follow for you. If you have any questions, any comments, any concerns, please let me know. Happy sewing.